An ex-thug becomes the victim of a cruel experiment that gives him the superpower of rapid healing, but something happens in his life that makes him seek revenge. That is why today on the Summarizer, Deadpool 1. This is the story of Deadpool, one of the most beloved anti-heroes, who we first see in a scene of total chaos that's frozen in time, with our protagonist attacking a group of enemies inside a car that's about to crash. But the real beginning of his story happens a bit earlier, when a foreign cab driver named Dopinder takes our protagonist to a very important appointment and shares his tragic love story, revealing that he was supposed to marry a beautiful girl but his cousin stole her. During the ride, Deadpool tells him he's dressed so fancy to celebrate Christmas and because he's about to meet someone who's been very naughty. The cab driver, curious, asks what this person did, and that's when our protagonist lifts his mask, showing his burn-scarred face. He then realizes he forgot his bag of bullets and ammo, leaving him with only 12 shots to carry out his plan. When it's time to get out of the car, he tells the cab driver he left his wallet, so Dopinder has to settle for a friendly wave as payment. While Deadpool waits on the highway, he does something amazing by breaking the fourth wall and greeting us in the middle of the movie. Our protagonist looks directly at us to say that everything really began a few years earlier, but he's quickly distracted when he spots his enemy coming down the road, kicking off the movie's first big chase. Without hesitation, he throws one of the men onto the highway, burns another's forehead, and then we're back at the opening scene where the villain's car begins to fall. As this unfolds, live news broadcasts start covering the event, leading his friends Negasonic and Colossus to chase after him, hoping to help and persuade him to join the X-Men. On the highway, the villains close in on Deadpool, but he distracts them just in time to take out a few of them. Despite this, he gets shot in the arm but stylishly keeps killing his enemies. When he's done, he discovers his target Francis has escaped. To make things worse, one of the villains gets up to continue the fight, but our protagonist takes him down with ease. That's when he starts to tell us that this is a love story, really beginning 2 years ago during a night when he scared a pizza delivery guy as part of his usual job. He then goes to see her to tell her that the guy won't bother her anymore, helping us understand that his job involves getting paid to beat up bad men like himself. At his usual bar, he's surrounded by others doing the same kind of work and many women of the night. A big fight breaks out between some patrons and our protagonist, whose real name is Wade Wilson, falls in love at first sight with Vanessa. They have a unique chemistry, talking about their childhood traumas and family misfortunes. Wade decides to hire her services, giving her $200 in yogurt coupons to spend some time together in the game room. That night, they end up having a great time and time flies as they build a stable and very erotic relationship. On Christmas, Wade proposes to Vanessa, and she accepts, making their life together seemingly perfect. But things get complicated soon after when Wade suddenly collapses. The next day, he's diagnosed with terminal cancer, shattering their happiness despite his girlfriend's efforts to find a solution. Back in the present, Deadpool continues his hunt for Francis, as his mission isn't over. When he finally finds him, he manages to stab him in the chest, and taking off his mask reveals his identity. The anti-hero blames him for his new appearance, continuing to argue until Colossus suddenly appears and throws him aside. Returning to the beginning, Wade seems completely defeated after his cancer diagnosis, but his future wife is confident they can overcome this obstacle together. To escape a bit, he goes to his usual bar, where his friend gives him a card from a mysterious man who has been asking about him. This isn't just anyone, as he knows everything about Wade's health and work history. In a conversation, the man explains that he works for an organization that can cure his cancer and give him abilities most people only dream of, turning him into a superhero. But Wade can't take him seriously and prefers to leave to deal with his real problems. He goes back home but can't sleep that night, thinking about death and how much Vanessa is suffering because of him. So he packs his things and leaves without saying goodbye, deciding to accept the mysterious man's offer. In the present, Deadpool fights Colossus, who asks him to join them so he can learn to control his powers and use them at the right moments. Negasonic is also there, and the three start arguing while he continues to hurt Francis. But at one point, everyone gets distracted for a long moment, allowing the villain to escape. Deadpool immediately gets mad at Colossus and tries to punch him, but only ends up breaking his own bones. Thus, our protagonist is captured by his friends to be taken to the professor. The craziest part is that in the last second, Deadpool decides to cut off his own hand to free himself from the cuffs and escape. When Wade enters the organization that promises to cure his cancer, we see him a bit scared, not knowing what to expect. Around him are some people who seem mutated, and the guards strap him to a stretcher. At that moment, Francis himself approaches for the first examination, injecting him with a serum that activates the mutant genes in his DNA and starts subjecting him to extreme stress to enhance them. He also confesses that he's a mutant too, and that his transformation took away any physical pain, while Wade keeps making jokes non-stop because he never loses his peculiar sense of humor. The healing and transformation process continues for many days, during which Wade can't see Vanessa or hear from her. Despite this, he keeps cracking jokes until one day Francis threatens to sew his mouth shut. Then, he locks him in a capsule to deprive him of oxygen throughout the weekend, aiming to advance his mutation. This experiment severely damages his skin, transforming him into what he is now. Thanks to this, The cancer vanishes from his body because his mutated cells can eliminate any disease, and Francis makes it clear that he can also cure any side effects like the skin damage, but due to their rivalry he chooses not to. And things don't end there because Wade manages to steal a match and set fire to the building. He then attacks Francis at the right moment, but Francis defeats him by stabbing a large piece of iron into his chest. Hours later, the fire subsides, and our protagonist rises from the ashes without a single wound, thanks to his power to heal from anything. Days later, he finally locates Vanessa and, just as he's about to confront her, he realizes everyone around him is staring at him strangely because of his appearance, so he backs out. He decides to visit the bartender at his favorite bar, who is shocked to see his face and advises him to always wear a suit and mask because his appearance is truly horrifying. He also suggests finding a name to go by, and looking at the bar's chalkboard, he finds the iconic name, Deadpool. From there, our protagonist starts planning to find Francis and get his revenge, while continuing to work at night and gradually improving his new suit. Initially, he planned to wear white, but an elderly blind woman at the laundromat advised him to use red since bloodstains are hard to remove from white fabric. The search for Francis continues until he finds the recruiter who got him involved in the horrible experiment, sparking a new chase that leads him to the location he was seeking. He leaves in the same cab from the beginning, bringing us back to the present. We now see him getting out of the truck he used to escape the highway, revealing that Wade currently lives with the old blind woman from the laundromat. Meanwhile, we see Francis reuniting with Angel Dust to heal his wounds. Together, they start plotting a way to kill Deadpool, deciding to grind up his entire body so nothing is left to regenerate. They soon arrive at the usual bar looking for information about our protagonist. They start threatening the bartender, but all the patrons quickly come to his defense. The villains leave but take a picture of Wade and his boyfriend. Shortly after, the bartender contacts him to inform him of what happened, and together they head to the strip club where Vanessa works to protect her. Upon seeing her again, Wade feels the same as the first time but doesn't dare to talk to her, fearing her reaction. Then, Vanessa's boss tells her someone is looking for her with something to tell her about her ex-boyfriend. She goes out, seeing the silhouette of a mysterious man thinking it's the love of her life. But it's actually Francis who has come to kidnap her. Fortunately, Wade finds out what happened and immediately gathers dozens of weapons and over 3,000 bullets to rescue his girlfriend, and the elderly blind woman he lives with helps by giving him all her weapons. Before setting out, he stops at the X-Mansion to ask Colossus and Negasonic for help. They all get into their favorite cab driver's car, who confesses he's followed Deadpool's advice about fighting for love and has now kidnapped his future bride's cousin. Upon arrival, the three prepare for the tough battle ahead, making an epic hero walk. But soon, they realize Deadpool has left all the weapons in the taxi. To make things worse, the driver had an accident and they can't reach him, so they have no choice but to do this the old-fashioned way with much effort. Angel Dust makes an entrance like a true superhero, and with a single blow, she sends Colossus flying a few meters. So, Negasonic activates her firepower to attack her, kicking off the real showdown between both sides. The Metal Man gets up and starts fighting the villain's assistant, and with bullets flying uncontrollably, Deadpool uses his white underwear to request a truce but fails. With no other options, he fights all of Francis' men, killing enough of them to spell out the villain's name with their corpses. In retaliation, Francis orders continuous shooting at him and traps Vanessa in a capsule to deprive her of air, just like he did with our protagonist, intending to cause the same side effect on her skin. Luckily, Deadpool reaches the rooftop to try to stop him, and there Vanessa realizes that the man in the red suit is the same one who abandoned her 2 years ago, calling him an idiot. Seconds later, the battle between the two mutants begins. Fortunately, with a simple move, Deadpool breaks the capsule, helping his girlfriend breathe fresh air, then continues trying to defeat Francis. Meanwhile, Angel Dust is about to strangle Colossus. Vanessa manages to free herself from the capsule and helps her ex-boyfriend as he's being stabbed by the villain, allowing Deadpool to show her how much he loves her in the cheesiest way possible. But this distracts him, and once again, Francis injures Vanessa. The fight between them continues, and at the same time, Negasonic uses her explosive power to save Colossus, causing a massive detonation. Because of this, the ship everyone is on starts collapsing, trapping both our protagonist and Vanessa under large concrete debris. Soon, we see that Vanessa has survived, and Francis is still determined to kill Deadpool, so they continue fighting until the very end. This time, the villain confesses there was never a cure for his skin problem, and that he tricked him all along just to make him suffer more like an idiot. This enrages our protagonist, who is about to shoot him in the forehead. But he's interrupted by Colossus, who gives a moving speech, telling him that forgiving enemies would make him a true superhero. But this isn't Deadpool's style, so he decides to kill Francis right then and there, not letting his friend finish the speech. The worst part is that he then faces Vanessa, who doesn't hesitate to hit him for abandoning her. This is when our protagonist finally gathers the courage to apologize and show her his new appearance. But under his mask, he has another one of Wolverine's because he's afraid this might change their relationship. Even so, she moves forward. At first, she can't hide her amazement, but in the end, she lifts her pinky finger to show she still loves him and will stay by his side, while his two allies remind him they're going to make him an X-Man. This story doesn't end there because, in a post-credit scene, we see Deadpool again, in an elegant bathrobe, saying it's time to go home because there's no money to produce a sequel to this movie. Deadpool decides to protect a teenage mutant from the clutches of a genetically modified soldier from the future. To do this, he seeks help from other superheroes. That is why today on the Summarizer, Deadpool 2. The story of the legendary Deadpool continues some time after saving his beloved Vanessa in the epic final battle of the first movie. Now, we see him completely depressed, smoking, and creating an explosion to end his own life. But to understand why he decided to lie on top of 4,500 liters of gasoline, we need to go back a bit, specifically 6 weeks ago when he became an incredible international gangster hired all over the world. One of those times, he entered a luxurious building in Asia, and in his style, he managed to surprise a gang of mobsters, taking out almost all of them, showing us very violent scenes, though our protagonist assures us this sequel is a family movie. In his last mission, he's cornered by many men, so before finishing the job he decides to escape in the car of our favorite taxi driver, Dopinder, who now works for him and dreams of living his life. That night, he comes home to celebrate his anniversary. Vanessa, a bit annoyed that he's late, still hugs him, telling him she's stopped taking birth control because it's time for them to have kids. They're genuinely happy, making Deadpool's life perfect and enviable. But this isn't entirely true because, just like in the first movie, something terrible is about to happen. Out of nowhere, the gang he escaped from hours earlier shows up trying to kill him. Fortunately, our protagonist manages to take out almost all of them, but in the last moment, one of the thugs shoots Vanessa, and she dies in his arms, unable to help her. Because of this, Deadpool chases down the mobster and kills him, but it isn't enough to make him feel better. Months pass, and Wade can't deny his depression, so he sneaks back into the blind old woman's house to steal a bag of drugs, but when she realizes he's come home, she tries to make him feel better. In the following days, Deadpool tries to die in countless ways but can't due to his powerful mutation, leading us to the film's first scene where we see him explode into many pieces. Incredibly, his soul transports to a parallel reality where an invisible wall separates him from Vanessa, and she tells him it's not his time to be there. In the real world, we see Colossus arrive to collect each part of his body, taking them to the X-Men mansion to reassemble him until he wakes up again. There, we see Negasonic again and meet her new girlfriend, Yukio, who greet him and welcome him to his new training. However, Deadpool quickly gets distracted, and in a quick scene, we see the original actors from one of the X-Men movies. Elsewhere, in some future moment, we see a mysterious man finding his home completely destroyed, and in revenge, he decides to travel to the past to find out what happened. At the mansion, Wade argues with his teammates over food, until out of nowhere he gets sentimental, apologizing and thanking them for being in his life. Meanwhile, we go to a boarding school where many mutant children are being indoctrinated to get rid of their powers, and we meet Russell, who will be very important in this story. The next day, Wade is called to his first official mission with his X-Men teammates, and he gets his new uniform. They go to the mutant kids' boarding school because one of them is threatening to kill everyone. Quickly, our protagonist takes the lead and approaches little Russell, who is behind it all. The boy mocks Negasonic for her Justin Bieber 2018 look, making Deadpool laugh as he tries to mediate with him. But Russell uses his powers to throw him far away, leaving our protagonist no choice but to hit him to take control, and so they put a special collar on him that neutralizes his powers. Deadpool then discovers the boy has been physically abused at the boarding school by the director, so he decides to follow his principles and starts shooting all the staff. Colossus immediately tries to stop him, saying he's never had the material to be a true X-Man, leading Deadpool to end up imprisoned alongside Russell in a mutant prison. The villain of this movie is Cable, the mysterious man from the future. We see him now preparing the weapons he'll use for his revenge masterfully, while our protagonist also has a collar that disables his powers, causing his cancer to advance. During dinner, another mutant prisoner starts harassing them, provoking a brawl, and Deadpool gets stabbed, turning everything into chaos. At that moment, the boy thinks they form a team, but our protagonist clarifies they don't, as there's only one person who truly matters to him, and she's no longer in this world. Suddenly, a loud noise rings out, caused by Cable, who has epically broken into the high-security prison searching for his family's killer, causing new chaos. Soon, we discover the dreaded killer is none other than Russell. Seeing this, Wade tries to defend him, starting a fight with the villain. Amid the blows, he manages to get rid of the neutralizing collar, so his severe wounds heal quickly. The boy continues to flee from Cable until Deadpool comes back to life and attacks the villain without hesitation, ironically introducing himself as Batman. Cable tells him he comes from the future, and our protagonist starts mocking him. The fight continues for a few more minutes, but unfortunately, the villain steals the coin Vanessa left him before dying, so the boy is captured again, and Deadpool dies once more. This takes our protagonist back to Vanessa in the other dimension. Still unable to reach her due to the invisible barrier, he decides to tell her what's happened, and she responds that children are a great opportunity to be better, so he begins to believe Russell is the key. Without hesitation, he goes to the usual bar to talk with his friend about what he should do to move forward, and the first thing that comes to mind is creating a battle team with Dopinder volunteers, but he's quickly rejected for not having any superpowers. In the prison, Russell manages to reach a large cell where a great beast has supposedly been hiding for many years, so he gives it his lunch and asks for its help. Meanwhile, Deadpool holds auditions to form his new team. The first to show up is Terry Crews, whom we all remember from his iconic role in White Chicks, but here he doesn't have the power to sing. Here he can distort electric fields. Next comes the clown from it, called Zeitgeist in this movie, who can vomit acid, earning him a spot on the team. There's also Vanisher, who is invisible or simply didn't show up on time, so we can't see him. Rusty describes himself as better than everyone, a girl named Domino with the power of luck, and the human Peter without any abilities who is accepted because of his sincerity, much to Dopinder's annoyance. Once the new team is formed, they prepare to intercept Russell's transport. They all use parachutes, but there's a strong wind that day, and everything goes wrong. Deadpool gets caught on a large sign, Terry dies crashing into a bus, the invisible guy is electrocuted on some wires, revealing his true identity as Brad Pitt. Peter lands safely, but Zeitgeist gets stuck in a wood chipper, and when Peter tries to help him, they both end up dying. The only one to survive is Domino, thanks to her incredible luck. She manages to survive all the dangers on her path as she continues with Deadpool's plan. However, things won't be easy for them, because Cable also plans to kidnap Russell, sparking another intense battle with Deadpool, joined by his lone surviving teammate. During the fight, Russell takes advantage of the distraction to free the mysterious beast, who turns out to be a giant mutant named Juggernaut. The first thing this giant does is tear Deadpool's body in half, and then Russell decides to leave with Juggernaut, saying he plans to get revenge on the headmaster of the boarding school for all the harm done to him. With no other options, Domino carries half of Deadpool to the blind old woman's house, where he begins to regenerate slowly, showing his tiny childlike legs reminiscent of the joke from the first movie where he had a tiny hand. Everyone is shocked by this, but the most important moment is when Cable shows up to make an indecent proposal. He asks Deadpool to team up to defeat Juggernaut, because this beast is truly powerful. During the conversation, we learn that thanks to the screenwriters, Cable can't use his ability to travel back and prevent Juggernaut's birth, as it would be too easy a solution, so Deadpool empathizes with him and agrees to help. However, our protagonist insists that it wasn't Russell's doing, assures Cable he won't kill the boy, and asks for one last chance to convince Russell to change his ways, and they quickly agree to form a new super team. They make a stop at the X-Men mansion, where Deadpool serenades Colossus, asking for forgiveness and begging him to join them because they need his strength, and here we find Colossus is heartbroken and the girls are still upset. Meanwhile, Russell and Juggernaut arrive at the boarding school to exact their revenge. Shortly after, our protagonist and his team arrive. Domino confesses she grew up in the same place, so luck is giving her a second chance. The new team tries to stop Russell, but he decides to blow up the door and begins chasing the headmaster. At the same time, Juggernaut battles Deadpool and his allies with his super strength until Domino manages to exploit his weakness. Our protagonist is severely injured, but luckily Colossus shows up to help him, as he is his true friend, and makes him feel a bit better. However, things aren't over yet because Juggernaut has survived and starts fighting Colossus. Domino also fights several of the school staff in front of the other mutant kids, and Cable helps Deadpool when he's in danger. Russell corners the headmaster, threatening to burn him alive. Just in time, Deadpool and Cable appear trying to stop him civilly, although Cable still considers killing him violently. Outside, the X-Men girls show up at the right moment to help Colossus, and shortly after, Russell causes another explosion with his power just before being strangled. We see Deadpool and Cable weakened by the young boy, who is determined to harm them. Despite everything, Deadpool approaches him again, trying to convince him to change his ways and apologizes for abandoning him in prison. The boy says he can't trust anyone and attacks again, so Deadpool opts to put on the collar that disables his powers, willing to sacrifice himself for everyone else, telling Russell he's ready to die to ensure he doesn't hurt anyone. Cable disagrees and shoots at the boy, but unexpectedly Deadpool runs quickly, taking the bullet to protect the young villain. Everyone regrets what happened. As Deadpool's powers are disabled, Colossus tries to deactivate the collar, but Deadpool doesn't let him, wanting to reunite with Vanessa. When the young villain realizes someone sacrificed themselves for him, he begins to change his attitude, and amid a heartfelt song, we see Deadpool die. Well, not really, because seconds later he opens his eyes to say goodbye to each of his companions before dying for real. Well, actually not. Yes, this joke happens a few more times amid Deadpool's typical humor, but then he finally dies, and we see Wade can join Vanessa in the other dimension. Everyone laments his death, and incredibly Cable decides to go back in time, though he no longer plans to save his family. Meanwhile, Vanessa tells Wade they don't have much time together because it's not his time yet, and promises to wait for him in that same place until it's his turn to return. We realize that just before arriving at the boarding school, Cable gently tapped Deadpool's chest to place a lead plate exactly where he would get shot, saving him. Our protagonist is surprised because Cable used his only time travel moment to save him, and the former villain confesses he did it because he knows his family is safe, deciding to stay in this present for a while. Though Cable doesn't admit it, Deadpool knows he wants to stay for him, and quickly Russell removes the collar that suppresses his powers so he can hug his new friend. This new squad is about to leave when the headmaster of the boarding school shows up, insulting them for being violent. Epically, our trusted taxi driver arrives and kills him. The story doesn't end there because we have post-credit scenes. This time, Negasonic manages to fix Cable's time machine, and Deadpool uses it for incredible things. For example, he kills Vanessa's assassin just before she gets shot, changing everything that happened afterward, promising their daughter will be named Cher. He also saves Peter's life, kills the sewn-mouthed Deadpool from the X-Men movie with Wolverine, and shoots Ryan Reynolds in the head just before he accepts the role in Green Lantern. But the best part is when he travels to Hitler's birth and approaches the baby intending to strangle him. That was Deadpool 2. Don't forget to like, comment on what movies you want to see next, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next videos.